FEMA.
I'm about 8 months into this also.
Yeah, it's 5.
Where it's a room filled with
I don't think I'll too much longer. It'll be a different problem.
My wife's freshman year of college.
I'm just
to be as a in Austin? Well, the one here in Austin. There's where's the
I guess we should get started. We're going to be taping us any minute now. So if anybody's not here, then
My side's really easy.
okay.
Yeah. So
We'll find some people will wander in.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Especially when I start singing.
Can everybody take a seat? We're just going to go ahead and get started and let people wander in. So I think you've all met him, but this is Zach Moore from Oracle, going to be talking to us today about NetSuite, and everybody here is very interested in what you've got to say. So I'm just going to let you take it away from there.
Awesome. Well, we are excited to be here. Just a quick clarification, and I think I have a couple of slides that'll help with this. Is I've got some what we would call swag in the sales world here, the marketing that's labeled Oracle. We have some that's Oracle NetSuite hasn't come in yet. But primarily what we're going to talk about today is a product called NetSuite, not Oracle. The Oracle brand is something that happened through an acquisition about a year ago. But NetSuite, as a company, is kind of maintaining its own kind of global business unit. But I've got these cool products here, so I wanted to be able to let you guys have them. So a little point about that. So I've got a few slides here just to talk about what NetSuite is, who we serve, and the product here that we're going to be discussing. But the main point of our conversation today is what Cheryl Gibson here is going to be covering, which is the elephant in a nonprofit boardroom, how to break down silos and make sure that the way the finance team thinks about money and the way that the fundraising team thinks about money doesn't get the executive director fired during a boardroom meeting because they're misaligned. But with that being said, let me just talk a little bit about who NetSuite is, if you haven't heard. So we have some customers in the room. Thank you guys. For those who aren't customers, if you guys, obviously you've heard about NetSuite. So I'm really looking at Tristan and Dan, and I'm forgetting your name.
Ken.
Ken. Have you guys heard about NetSuite before today?
No.
You have. Like how, like a week ago?
Oh no, I've heard a lot about it.
Okay, you've got a lot about it. What about you, Dan?
Is this something you work for Oracle?
Technically, yes.
And is this just something they're giving away or something they're selling? Is this their contribution to charity or what?
Great question. I'm going to get to that at the very end to talk about our program and how we serve nonprofits. A year ago, Oracle and NetSuite were completely separate entities. About a year ago, Oracle bought NetSuite because of our role in the mid-market, but NetSuite is not going away. We're going to exist in the market forever with Oracle. So there's a little bit of a brand merger that's happening. Today we're talking about NetSuite. Okay, So in terms of what NetSuite is, we're the first cloud ERP. And when you think of ERP, it stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. Think accounting, but it's not just a platform to run one department. It's a platform to run a business. So it's not just accounting, it's also HR, budgeting and forecasting. You're going to have different procurement processes that you can run through NetSuite. It can really be as simple or as complicated as you like. We were the first platform to be able to release this truly in the cloud and do a software as a service. We did that in 1998, the same year that Saving Private Ryan was launched, the same year that we had another kind of impeachment process going on with a Clinton. So a long time ago. When we were just NetSuite, we had about 4,700 employees. Last year, we did about $1 billion in revenue. And it just kind of shows the success that we've had, both in the for-profit and the nonprofit space with our product. We're used by 30,000 organizations, and that is international. So if you're working with an NGO or an organization that needs to kind of process multi-currencies, we tend to have a really good solution around that. And like I said, we are backed by Oracle, which is a $46 billion company. And a little bit about the growth in the nonprofit space. In July of 2016, we had about 600 nonprofits using our platform. And that may have been through our grantee program. It may have been the larger nonprofits that fell outside of that program. But as of last month, that number was 1,000. So we're seeing tremendous growth at NetSuite in the nonprofit vertical. It's been the fastest growing vertical for the past 2 years. Any questions about NetSuite as a company? Especially with the Oracle acquisition, you'd be curious about. There's a building that's being built here on the river. It's Oracle. I know nothing about it. Sorry. It's going to be big. A lot of concrete.
You're not going to be there?
I'm not, no. Probably not. They're probably going to let us stay in the NetSuite
Oracle
office.
setting up a major center here or something?
We already have an office up in northern Texas, northern Austin. And I think they're relocating to the city center just to be more part of the community in Austin and kind of attract a younger crowd. I'm sure that's not the only reason why they're building a $1 billion building, but that's at least what they tell me. Okay, so thinking about why organizations and specifically nonprofits choose NetSuite, I could go in here and talk about all the features and the functionalities of accounting and procurement. I really don't want to get into that. We're an ERP platform, but this is why organizations are going to choose NetSuite when they start thinking about a business operations platform. The first is that we're designed for modern business. I mean, you guys know what this is like with the Uberization of the economy, with things going to mobile, that the economy is moving at breakneck speeds. And everywhere from retail to transportation to manufacturing is being disrupted by this kind of data-driven economy. And so organizations need to be flexible and be able to innovate on a platform. And so NetSuite is built for that, to be flexible and to be able to deploy so that you're not having to buy multiple systems every time you need to make a strategic change in your organization. And the third point right there is unified data model. And this is really going to come home to roost when Cheryl talks about what she's going to talk about today, is a lot of nonprofits in particular, they have silos in their organization. The fundraising team's running on one platform, the finance team's on another platform, maybe the program manager's running a program. Data's all in all of these different places. And no one, it's very hard to find out what the organization's actually doing. And so what exists in between all these different departments and all these different solutions is an Excel file. And that file is updated every month. It's huge. Maybe there's a bunch of shadow databases. It's never in real time, and it has all the kind of trappings of an Excel file. Is it accurate? Was it prone to mistakes? Is it up to date? Can I make data-driven decisions off of it? And the answer is way too often no. You can't. So organizations are choosing NetSuite because not only can we handle the financials and bring the financials into the system, but we can start breaking down silos and through integration. We're actually then using NetSuite to start being able to get a clear picture of the entire organization. And then finally, the last 2 points here is commerce-driven, meaning that we try to own the transaction in NetSuite. And as the different business models of nonprofits are changing, where maybe it was traditionally, hey, I want to get funding, and then I'm going to go and serve these organizations. There's even for-profit models that are starting to emerge where social entrepreneurs are starting to like really break down the business models, and being able to be built for commerce is really important to that. And then finally, we're built for nonprofit. A little bit more about that. So NetSuite, we've got 30,000 organizations. And you might think that we're updating 10, 12, 15 different versions of our platform because we're serving so many different types of organizations, retail, wholesale distribution, nonprofit. Not true. It's one platform, but we're all verticalized on the application. So it's highly flexible, but it has all the benefits of getting the resources and deployment and development of one platform. So my point here is when we're talking to nonprofits about NetSuite, they're not getting a generic ERP, they're getting one that's verticalized and built for nonprofits. We're taking our industry knowledge in our organization, which is what we're talking about right here. So everywhere, if you're going to talk to at Oracle NetSuite to someone in sales, or someone in implementation, or someone in support, they're going to have nonprofit experience. They're going to speak your language. You're not going to talk to somebody in wholesale distribution, and they have to translate. Well, what's a donation like for a retailer? You don't have that conversation in NetSuite. We're verticalized. And on top of that, we built in functionality into the platform that takes advantage of that. So instead of giving the platform to a nonprofit and saying, well, here you go, figure out how to use it, we actually have recommended starting points. And I've called out a couple of those leading practices right there, like FASB reports. Click of a button. You can print a FASB report, get the data models there, as well as grant accounting, tracking, and being able to segment your data so that if you have different programs, the data set makes sense for you as a nonprofit. Okay. So then the question becomes, what is NetSuite trying to do in the market? What big problem are we trying to solve? And what we found by talking to different foundations and different funders is they're asking nonprofits to catch up with the data-driven age. They want to be able to make data-driven decisions by who they're funding and how nonprofits are getting their money. They want to know that the nonprofit's being impactful. And if you don't have a unified data model, if you have silos, if your departments aren't talking to each other, it's very hard to provide that information. So what we're trying to do is help nonprofits at the very top connect their dollars to their outcomes. That can be very challenging. But basically what it means is you're going to get your inputs, money coming into your organization. You have different activities, and you have different outputs, the number of people you serve. But how does that dollar actually affect the nonprofit? If I have $1,000, what can you tell me that $1,000 is going to do? Is it going to raise the health of your constituents by 20%? What if I give you $20,000? What if I give you $20,000? What if I give you $200,000? These are the kind of things that we're seeing foundations and organizations wanting nonprofits to show, simply because businesses and even individuals are being so driven by data. So that's what we're doing. But then the question is, like, how do you get there? And there's really three things that we think are important for nonprofits in order to get from where they are today to being able to connect dollars to missions. And the first is a flexible platform. We talked about that a little bit initially, but you're not going to do this overnight, and so you want to be able to get your financials into the system, but then slowly over time evolve and build out the data, add different inputs, and if you're locked into a platform that's not flexible, very hard to do that. So the first is a flexible platform. The second is the path. Again, you're not going to do this overnight, so what is the path from getting out of your current system and into a point where you're starting to break down silos and connect dollars to outcomes? And this evolution right here, I also have a nice vinyl here on the wall. When this slide goes away, you can check it out. Is our recommended path for going from QuickBooks and Excel all the way to being a disruptor in your space and connecting dollars to outcome. And it really looks like financials first, doing some procurement, make sure your grants are tracked appropriately, and then you can see you're slowly starting to do fund accounting, having unified CRM data in your system, being able to maybe extend out and accept online donations or certainly integrate with online donations platforms. And then as the evolution continues, You click a button and you can say like, hey, we received $1,000 for this, and 3 months later we improved outcomes by this much. That's the goal in our kind of ambitious vision in the nonprofit space. Any questions about this? I'll be around afterwards to talk about it, but I just want to pause right there. Yeah.
That last one after the CRM, you said that, hey, we got $1,000 and we're able to increase our reach by this much. Are you saying that there's an element that crunches those numbers and visually shows that to you? Is that what you're saying?
That's our vision. So right now, what's kind of built into the platform is being able to have different financial ratios, program efficiencies. And our vision, because it's a flexible ERP platform, is that you can have different fields that can associate dollars with activities or projects. And that's in the system right now. But you may want to build that out over the evolution. That may be step 2. But then you're kind of telling us, well, what is your outputs? How many people you're serving? And there's a metric there that you're building into the platform. And then outcomes. Now, I'm going to stand before you right now and say that figuring out what your outcomes are, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Like, how do you measure that?
I'll talk about it too, and I have things that
Yeah. Yeah. But that's at least the vision. And it's certainly, it's the expectations being driven by the funders. And it makes sense, right? So we want to honor that. Good question. And sorry, what was your name again?
I'm Susanna.
Susanna, nice to meet you. I'm Zach. Perfect. Okay. Final thing here, the question was asked, how do organizations work with NetSuite? Our founder, Evan Goldberg, founded NetSuite with the vision that understanding the business model is going to be to serve for-profits. We're not going to be a billion-dollar company last year by only serving nonprofits, recognizing that the platform was going to be built for for-profits. But he always had a vision for leveraging that platform for the nonprofit space and letting them have it available to them. And so years ago, we started NetSuite.org. This is our social impact team. This team is 100% continuing with Oracle resources. Oracle didn't quite have a team even kind of close to this level of impact in its organization. And so our promise from Mark Hurd is we're going to get all of Oracle's resources with none of its bureaucracy. And that includes the .org team. So we're really excited about that. And there's 3 areas that has kind of impacted the nonprofit space. The first is suite donation. Depending on the size of the organization and how much of NetSuite they'd like to use, they can get the base donation, the base NetSuite CRM, which is about $70,000 worth of software, for free with 5 users. And everything else after that is discounted. If you're a little bit larger, there's different programs that we have for you, and it's mostly based around enablement and making sure that you're going to get the system you need. Suite Volunteer is saying, okay, now you've got the system, well, how are you going to use it? Maybe you can't go and pay $200,000 for a professional service person to code for you. Well, we pay our NetSuite people to kind of do that kind of work for our organizations. And so you apply for it, you say, here's what my project is, and then we kind of do that work, and there's some metrics under that. And Suite Impact is just our kind of corporate responsibility and encouraging our employees to go out into the nonprofit space and volunteer. Any questions about NetSuite? That's all I got. Everything else is going to be good. Okay, well, if you have any questions about our program or our product, I'm going to be around afterwards. Just I'll introduce Cheryl.
Yeah, we can have some question and answer period at the end too.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think that you'll probably be a lot of questions.
I'm
I hope
sure.
so, yes.
And I will go ahead and hand it over to you, Cheryl.
Okay, great, thank you.
This is one.
I'm going to introduce myself in just a second, but before I do, I actually want to do a little bit of a poll. How many in this room, because I know there's some people who have worked, I think it was formerly Greenlight, so you've worked with nonprofits. How many have been in a situation where you had fundraising reports that did not match your finance reports? 2. So anyone who has never had that problem? I'm just going to put 0. Okay. So of the 2 who have experienced this problem, I'm curious as to why you think that may be. So I'm going to start with the first one. Are you using different databases? So some of you are using Razor's Edge and QuickBooks. Is that a reason? Okay. How about the reports would have worked, but there was some kind of error, human error? Maybe? Is that a, yeah? Maybe? I'll say yes. Is that you as well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. How about timing? Here's another one. Here's another possibility. So say you're doing your gift entry and your accounting person has completed their monthly processing, but development office didn't get it until, I don't know, 2 weeks from now. Copy checks didn't get it. Possible? Okay. How about someone just didn't tell another person? You got a $5,000 check, but somehow it sat in someone's office and no one talked about it. Possible? Okay. Any other reasons why they might not match? Anybody? Other reasons?
Somebody stole something.
Okay, good. All right, thanks. So I'm going to use this later. So let me just start this here. So my name is Cheryl, and I'm going to, that's not as slick as Zach is with this.
Is it not working? And I don't mean to make you self-conscious, but
That's okay.
that thing right next to you is the Facebook Live stream.
Oh, hi.
So,
She meant to give them a close up.
Yeah.
You see it?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Is it just the plus one?
It's going to be the arrow to it.
Okay. All right, so a few things. I'm going to introduce myself, but I just want to say that some of the product features that you'll see here, this is a safe harbor statement. We're not making any promises about future functionality or stock prices. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Cheryl Gibson. I have worked at NetSuite since 2014, but I actually have been working in nonprofit technology for about 20 years. I started out as a development assistant, and I actually am from the Bay Area, and I ended up getting into software. I worked at PeopleSoft, but I found that I was not that happy at software companies, and I ended up becoming a database implementer. I started out doing Razor's Edge implementations in the Bay Area. I worked for a company called Heller Consulting, and this was in the early 2000s. So I got to learn Razor's Edge really well. And I would say that my specialty in those days, and it has helped me all the way through my nonprofit technology career, was in data migrations. So I learned the structures of Razor's Edge, and I also learned and worked with a number of fundraisers as to how to do best major gifts, individual fundraising, segmentation, all the kinds of things that you would have traditionally done in 2001. But it changed in the early 2000s. I was in the Bay Area, and I started working for a company called Groundspring, which was acquired by Network for Good. You probably have heard of Network for Good because they do the online donation buttons. Telling you all of this for a reason, because the internet technology age really changed fundraising. And I ended up working at a time when the Salesforce.com Foundation was just starting. I was one of the first nonprofits to use Salesforce.com in 2003, and I implemented our customer service team on Salesforce.com. I am now a Salesforce developer. I still maintain my certifications, but what I did at Network for Good was I integrated our online donation button into a version of Salesforce.com that was like Razor's Edge. So it was the first online donation integration. And at that point, I had probably worked with maybe 50 nonprofits doing data migrations and Razor's Edge consulting. But as part of Network for Good, I started working probably with I created a product that had about 200 customers, and I helped them do their data migrations and really, in earnest, started working with online fundraising. And I created a whole series called the Internet Academy. Telling you all of this for a reason, because that company, they decided they did not want to continue to do online integration, so I moved to Austin, Texas in 2009, and I worked at a company called Convio, and I was the product manager. I developed a product called Common Ground, which you may have heard of. It was the second product that was integrating online donations into Salesforce.com. So, of course, I wasn't the only one working on it. I worked as a team, but that product was acquired by Blackbaud. So when that happened, I ended up going into professional services again. So I worked for a company called Cal Partners. I was a director of professional services there. And in 2014, I was asked by the person who I report to, David Gofflifo, to come to NetSuite to help develop a product for nonprofits on the NetSuite.com platform. So all of the work that you see and what Zach is talking about is the result of efforts that myself and a small team made to create a version of NetSuite for nonprofits. So I want to tell you a few things about me that are important to know, because I am not a salesperson, and so Zach may have to like muzzle me and take me out of the room, but I will tell you some important things I think about this topic, fundraisers versus finance, and also why NetSuite I think is some pieces of NetSuite that are important to know as you're choosing or thinking about software recommendations to clients if you have them. I know that one of you works for Greenlights. So fundraising and reporting mismatch, this was the result, but actually didn't update, so it's not accurate. But in any sense, the reason I'm talking about this, I wrote a white paper called Elephant in the Nonprofit Boardroom, because the finance and fundraising offices often have very different views of how money is spent and how the reports should actually look, and you're not actually getting the whole picture. That's why I put here the kinds of reports that you would see in fundraising, the last year, but unfortunately not this year reports, or the FASB reports. These are very different kinds of reports. So I want to tell you a story. This is a true story, and my white paper was based on it. When I was in San Francisco in the early 2000s, I was working for a small arts organization, and I was doing a Razor's Edge implementation. And I was working with the major gifts officer there, and she was really nervous to work with me. She was very concerned about everything, actually, in terms of how we were setting up the codes for the campaigns and the appeals and the funds. It was a tense situation, and I wasn't really sure why, but in the course of working with her, what she revealed to me was that she had just started working at this organization about 3 months prior. She had been fired from her last job. In fact, the whole development department had been fired from a very large organization in San Francisco. And the reason she was fired is because the board of that organization held her accountable for losing $1 million. How do you lose $1 million? Did she actually lose $1 million? Did she steal $1 million? She didn't actually. That was not the situation. The situation was that she was a major gifts officer, and a prospective donor conditionally offered $1 million to this arts organization, only if they had actually done some part of a capital campaign build out would this donor give the money. She had entered it in Razor Edge as a pledge, but it was a conditional gift. The accounting department had never entered it into their software at all. She considered it a pledge, and when the donor found out that the commitment was not made on the capital improvement, they backed out, and she didn't actually have the money. She got fired, so did the development assistant, so did everybody get fired with her. So this is a true story, and I want to talk a little bit about this in relationship to NetSuite, because there are aspects to what NetSuite does that allow you to have much better fundraising operations. Even though now that I am working with NetSuite, it is primarily, as Zach mentioned, a finance-based system. It's not a fundraising system per se. But I'm going to talk about that because the fundraising and the finance people, who have very different perspectives, actually can come together using, I believe, some really basic tenets of good fundraising operations. How many of you have even heard the term fundraising operations? You look like you might have. Gentleman in the checkered shirt. So I'm going to talk about fundraising operations, and I'm going to use a prototype organization. So one of the things that I have done at NetSuite is, in terms of building out our whole product, is we use what we call user personas and organizational personas. So the idea behind using a persona is that you want to be able to build something based on some level of reality check. So the organization persona that we used here, the Anytown Animal Rescue Shelter, I think Zach mentioned to you that we have about 600 customers. At the time that I started at NetSuite, we had about 400 customers. What I did is I interviewed our customers, and I created a composite organization called Anytown Animal Shelter. And Anytown Animal Shelter has about an $80 million budget, and they have a couple of different programs: community veterinary services, adoption services, and education. So this is Anytown Animal Shelter. Anytown Animal Shelter has a staff. I'm not going to go into all of who they are and what they do, but this is important because the way that NetSuite has been designed, it has been designed based on how nonprofits actually work. So what we're trying to do in our development is to not build software just based on what we think, but build software based on what our nonprofit customers actually do. So you'll notice that we've got some C-level people here, but we also have program people, we have development people, and in the middle, you'll see we have all of our accounting. So I want to talk a little bit about the language of nonprofit money, because part of the reason that the reports don't match is because people are not actually using the same terminology. So in the language of fundraising, are there any fundraisers here? Are you all finance people? Finance? Fundraiser? You're a fundraiser. So, and what is your name?
My name's
Kristen, and you in the back?
Susanna.
Susanna. So are you a development director? You major gifts, or?
Mostly I do grants.
Oh, okay.
Since I'm a CFRE, theoretically I can do.
You can do everything. Okay, good. Awesome. So then you'll know what I'm talking about. So there are a lot of different types of fundraising initiatives. But campaign and appeals are a very common way of talking about how you raise money. So the overall way in which you would be building revenue for your organization is called a campaign. People structure it differently, but in this example we use a special event. And the specific iteration of that campaign, a Black Tie Gala 2017, is called an appeal. This is different from finance, which will use the term fund, but they may use it differently than the fundraiser, because what we have here is where money is intended to be spent. And in finance, people will sometimes use the term fund very specifically to refer to restrictions. So this is really important because the types of reports that you're going to be generating with the mismatches, if you don't have these lined up, are going to be different. So I'm going to talk about fundraising operations, and Zach, I think this is something important for you to note in terms of how people are going to be using NetSuite. So the way that we're going to be thinking about it here is a cycle. So Rachel, who is the fundraising development director, is going to send out her campaign. She has segmented a group of people, and she's sending out, say it's an email initiative. Jason, who is the accounting clerk, is going to be entering it in to a fundraising system, but before he does that, he has got to copy the gifts, and he has to code them based on how we're going to designate them. Now, in our world today, there's a proliferation of data, so he could be exporting these out from Network for Good. He could be, maybe they're using Shopify. There's all kinds of different data points that could be coming in. But Jason is responsible for totaling them, and then what we call batching. Batching assigns a particular number to them so that they can be tracked later on. So he puts them into QuickBooks, or he puts them into whatever the fundraising system is, but he doesn't do it by a person's name. He does it by the summary total of it. So it's a little of a nuanced difference that becomes very important, because Kristen is the person who enters it into Razor's Edge, or if you're using Nonprofit Success Pack or Donor Perfect, whatever gift entry system that you're using, she's going to be putting it in there. And Heidi, who is the controller, is going to be reconciling this. So Jason, Kristen, and Heidi play incredibly important roles in what the output of your money is going to be. And Kelsey here, because Kelsey is our network or our Razor's Edge administrator. Do any of you in this room, are you using systems where you actually know how to import and configure and administer systems? You look like you might.
You're on NetSuite.
Yeah, I'm on NetSuite.
Oh, you're on NetSuite. So are you the system? Are you the network administrator?
I'm on the finance team, so I'm not the administrator.
What's your role?
I'm a senior accountant, but I work with our tech team on all of our integrations. So
Oh, okay, cool.
Stuff just talks to each other.
Oh, okay. So are you a developer too? So
No, maybe someday.
okay, all right, good. So we'll talk about that. That's great. So you're somewhat in a Kelsey role. So then Kelsey will then take the what was entered and re-up it, because there may be a new fund that needs to be created, of new campaign and appeal codes, but she is the one who actually knows how to use the system to be able to do that, so that Rachel can get her reports. So this is fundraising operations, and Christopher Cannon, the CFRE who wrote the book on fundraising operations, wrote a really good book about the importance of fundraising operations. So as much as NetSuite is important, or QuickBooks is important, it's the actual process around how you're entering data that becomes very important. So there are a couple of important types of gifts that will create the most common mismatches in fundraising and finance reports. The first one is pledges. This is where in the accounting, and the accountants here can speak in a very detailed manner about this, but in an accounting system, there are rules for accounting where the pledge has to be booked when it is received in its entire amount. That is not the case for fundraising. So that is one of the first places where you're going to get mismatches, and it's not going to line up. Same with grants. Any type of multi-year gift, when you enter the gifts and you're entering them in different systems, you have to book as an accountant the entire amount when it is committed to. Donor intent is another place where if the fund codes are not set up appropriately in your chart of accounts, your reports are also not going to match. And then the last, the conditional gift. The true story that I told, it was not exactly a pledge, it was a conditional gift. And then it's going to completely mess up your reports. So the errors, this is based on what we talked about, different databases, human error, that's all pretty much correct. So the main points here are the FASB compliance for different revenue streams, money raised versus money spent, the reconciliation that may or may not happen but should happen between the teams, the two divided databases, Razor's Edge or SuccessPack and NetSuite, and a lack of communication. So I know a lot of people, perhaps Zach, believes that, that isn't one system the holy grail. Just one, just NetSuite, preferably just NetSuite, where you can, you have the idea of having the fundraising and the finance and the program teams all working together. I say maybe that is true. And the reason I say maybe is because of some of the other things that Zach has talked about, and then I'm going to move into a moment how we actually designed NetSuite, which may be the most interesting part, I think, of the story. The data structures are different. In a fundraising database, you have householding or constituent management, where the transaction is associated with a person or persons. In an accounting system, the data structure is very different. You're summarizing the money based on the restriction and the donor intent. So you have a very different structure. The kinds of things that you're looking at are different, and the kinds of business processes associated with it are very different. So I come from a fundraising background. I'm very interested in segmentation. I am an internet fundraiser, or not anymore because I do something different. So I'm really interested in email solicitations, who has clicked on what, what kinds of media they are attracted to. I want to segment them based on as much information as I can find out about them. I want to know how to do direct email campaigns. I want to reach out to them. I'm focused on the data, but in a really different way than if I'm in finance. I'm not a finance person. I'm not a CPA. Learning NetSuite was really different for me because I don't have that background. I learned it, but the kinds of things that finance people care about and the types of personalities that are drawn to finance are really different. They're very, you have compliance rules you must follow. You are audited. You need to make sure that that you dot your I's and cross your T's in a very different way. So Zach mentioned new business models. I worked at Network for Good, which was GroundSpring, which is a nonprofit organization. So this was back in 2003. Since then, there have been a proliferation of social impact nonprofits. People who sell things, but they are nonprofits. They are not actually making money, and their business structures are very complex. More complex in many senses than just regular businesses because they have to follow accounting rules. So there is a slicing and dicing of the money and business models that never existed before for nonprofits that have to follow regulatory rules. In addition to that, with these new business models, there are all kinds of ways now that people will give money to a nonprofit organization. It used to be that, and it still is in some nonprofit organizations, that you're getting all of your money through direct mail. Now that seems very, very old-fashioned. It's still a technique, but you're getting data from not just one external source, but maybe 5 or 10 different external sources because it's very easy, as in the next point, to slap up a donation page. It doesn't integrate with NetSuite, but you've got a lot of different ways in which you can set up online forms, bring in constituent data, bring in information. You're using point tools, and these point tools are not just fundraising tools. if you use Concur, if you use any type of payroll system, if you know, there's all different, in fact, why don't you tell us, what kind of integrations do you have?
So we use Nexonia for our expense reporting.
Nexonia 1, okay.
We have a custom integration with our grant making system.
Okay, grant making system. Is that, what system is that?
Well, it's an in-house system.
Okay, someone already created it. Okay,
Yeah.
so you've got that integration.
We have like small things like our Workday talks.
Workday, which is another human resource.
Our payroll does not.
Okay. All right. So these would technically be considered point tools, but they're point tools that have very specific focus. And that is important because it means that you have not just Excel spreadsheets that are sitting on somebody's desk. You've got all these different systems that you have to export data in and somehow get it into your system of record. And there's a real difference between CRM systems and ERP systems. And NetSuite at its heart is really an ERP system, but it does have the capability to do CRM. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but constituent relationship management. And for those of us who have been around the block for a while, CRM is, you know, still not like Razor's Edge. Razor's Edge, as much as it has flaws, is still designed to do traditional fundraising business processes that people need. It's not fancy in its access, but it allows you to do certain types of things that you have to build in other systems. So I want to talk about NetSuite Suite Success. That's essentially what Zach has been alluding to. And I started in 2014, and I worked with another person. Her name is Rashmi Singh, and we interviewed and designed a whole set, we call them prototypes, of how you would ideally do basic accounting, financials in NetSuite. NetSuite is not designed out of the box for nonprofit organizations. And so what we did is, have you heard the term data model? Has anyone here heard that term, data model? Zach has. Data model is over here. A data model is designing the engine of your car. It's designing where data is stored. So as I mentioned, in a fundraising system, you have a constituent and you have money associated with the constituent. In NetSuite, we didn't quite have that. We didn't have what is called householding. We wanted to focus on the transaction, but there's a lot of things that are in finance that are called dimensionality that did not exist natively in NetSuite. So our goal was to design something that would work for nonprofits. Now, your eyes may glaze over on this, but that structure has to be in place for you to be able to do the types of integrations that your organization wants to do, and for any kind of user interface that goes on top of it. So we did quite a bit of work to build in. You can see the campaign and the appeal, the different revenue types, the projects. This, although strange looking, this data model here allows you to do what Zach referred to in this chart here, which is if you want to correlate your basic financials with an outcome, you have to do the grunt work underneath to be able to capture the data so that you can report on it in a beautiful way. So I'm here having done the grunt work and done it with a lot of user input, so I'm interested in your user input. On this side here I have the chart of accounts, because for fundraising and finance to work together, the chart of accounts has to match. So if you're not matching up on your fund designation or you're using different language, you're never going to get your reports right. And it's very possible that you're going to be frustrated and stymied in getting that 360-degree view that everybody wants. Everybody wants this, but nobody wants to look at this. I'm sorry. I know that that's the case, but I want to kind of get you excited about it based on another way in which we have developed NetSuite, and that is that in addition to the infrastructure, our goal is to make NetSuite come alive for different people. So we wanted to work for the fundraisers, we wanted to work for the C-level, we wanted to work for the accounting clerk, and for us to be able to do that, and Zach alluded to this as well, we need to understand what your basic day-to-day is. Because when you use NetSuite, when you log in as an accounting clerk, it's not going to look the same, nor should it look the same as someone at the C-level. And that's the beauty of using a platform, because what a platform tool allows you to do, instead of being boxed in by QuickBooks or even Intact, a platform allows you to be able to create a user interface that really sings. And so what we did is we spent a bit of time looking at what was most important to different roles within an organization. And we really do work with user personas. So we really do work with a persona of, I think we called the CEO Bettina Hurst. Like, what does Bettina do when she walks in the door in the morning? What is she looking for? What is William looking for? William Cornell, the COO, what does he need? So these are the leading practices. So here's where it gets pretty. This is NetSuite at its prettiest, and the reason that it's pretty is because we wanted to create something. I don't know if you've heard of Hilda Polanco, and she runs an organization called FMA, which is Fiscal Management Associates. She talks about how you want to get really important information in a visual manner, so that for the statement of activities, which is an important report, just with a click of a button you can get that. If you want to see what your revenue stream is, you want to be able to see it visually. So this is part of the NetSuite Suite Success, where we have designed this. So as a CEO, you would get this. As an accounts receivable clerk, now this is how it works. So when you get NetSuite, it is designed like this. It's not like you have to set it up yourself. In many systems, what you'll see is you'll see this in the demo, but in reality, it's not like that. But in NetSuite Suite Success, which is a set of bundles and leading practices built behind it, it really does look like that. So we have Jason here. He's the accounting clerk. He wants to know a number of things that are very different from Bettina, and they're right there on his dashboard. The controller has some other things that she's looking at. Zach also mentioned things like program efficiency and expenses by functional expense. That is an accounting, also a FASB rule. So there's a number of things that are different for Heidi, the controller. And last in the development office shares a role. So these are all using the same instance of NetSuite, but the roles are different and the reports are different, and the way it looks and feels is really different. And last, the NetSuite administrator. As an administrator, you want to have access to everything, and you can see that the way that we designed it here is that anyone who has that level of privilege is able to get into all of the reports and have everything organized in a manner that it's fingertips. And there's more to it also as an administrator, that you can manage who's logging in and the security, that sort of thing. So what I want for you in terms of doing all of this, I've worked in the nonprofit sector, as I mentioned, for 20 years, and I love the idea of a 360. I love the idea of being able to do kind of future forward things like Zach has described, where you can really say to someone, you know, this dollar that this donor gave me, here's exactly how we spent it, and here's what we can do with it as we grow. The only way that you can do that is to have very good tracking systems underneath to be able to match the dollar to the outcome. I love NetSuite because as a platform, it gives you that. And I think the work that we've done has been really great in moving NetSuite forward so that it works for nonprofit organizations. I'm really excited to be here and to make this connection with you because part of what I have done is to talk a lot to customers and work one-on-one. I'm now in a different role at NetSuite where I'm working on the customer experience. So if you are in a finance role and you want to call me up and you have an idea about how you think NetSuite could really help a nonprofit, just in terms of analysis or things that you think that would work. I know you're already a customer. I would love to hear from you. I included this here because at the very remediate level is where you get the difference between fundraising and finance. We have designed a system now that allows you to be able to integrate data. You could be using Razor's Edge, you could be using the Nonprofit Success Pack, and you can still use NetSuite. It's not mutually exclusive. One of the things that I'm working on right now, because I have a data background, is a data integration between the Nonprofit Success Pack and NetSuite. And what we're trying to do is make that accessible for not just large organizations, but small organizations as well, so that you can use these platform tools in a manner that allows you to nimbly and in a fiscally responsible way grow as a nonprofit organization. And I love that about NetSuite. I love that about Salesforce too. I feel like it's the wave of the future, but it does require from you thought. I know that salespeople, and Zach, this is where you may want to muzzle me, like to talk about things being seamless, and you can do a dollar to outcome and all this kind of stuff. And that is true. That is really true, and I really believe in it. But because I've done professional services for as long as I have, because I've consulted with so many different organizations, I know that it takes a lot of work to get there. You don't just take these 4 spreadsheets and push them into NetSuite. You have to think about it. And that's why I'm very focused on business process and who you are within an organization and what you bring to bear in terms of your day-to-day. NetSuite can totally represent it. It can do amazing things, but it does take some effort. So that's what I've got. I'm curious if you have questions. I didn't ask, in the middle, in terms of questions about NetSuite or the work that we've been doing with nonprofits. And I know you're a customer, so maybe you could tell us, when did you start using NetSuite?
2013.
So you started using it before we did our Sweet Success program. What's the name of your org?
The Michael and Susan Bell Foundation.
Oh, okay, yeah. I talked to, I think there's Jason or someone there who used to be in IT. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So are there modules like accounting, donor database, grants management and tracking? I don't understand how the different components. I don't understand the different components.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the way it works is that NetSuite, out of the box, has basic financials. So if you got NetSuite, it is designed to do accounting, and it has other. They do call them modules, but the way that this solution works, as an end user, you wouldn't necessarily know this, but we install what are called bundles, and they're NetSuite works like as a platform, meaning you can develop on it as well as just use it in its basic form. So it's different as an internet technology because it allows you to develop. So what we did is we developed what are called bundles, and those are installed in NetSuite. And then it looks like when you navigate, like, let me go back to here. Do you see at the top? What is your name?
Dale.
Dale. Yeah. So you see where it says reports and customization, administration controls, and let's go to the earlier one, to the development, where it says NFP Solution Center, documents, reports. Can you see that up there? It's kind of small. Yeah, is that better? No, they're both, this is a little bit better.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, that's better. So see where it says payroll and HR, financial? So as an end user, what you would see is a menuing system like that. And that is what you just call a module, quote unquote, meaning we have designed bundles that are installed in native NetSuite that change the menuing system across the top. So it gives you functionality when you go to those menus that that would be considered quote unquote modules. The other thing about it, if you notice where it says Franco Store AR clerk, those are roles. So NetSuite allows you to create roles or profiles, is what they're called in Salesforce, that changes the menuing across the top and gives access to you, Dale, to certain things that Zach wouldn't have because he works in accounts payable and you work as the development director or the CFO. You have more access across here. So what we did is we created infrastructure. The way that NetSuite is natively, it doesn't have the ability to manage grants. It doesn't have the ability to manage dimensionality, like the types of restrictions and revenue types and subtypes that are specific to nonprofit organizations. So
It does not?
not natively.
Okay.
Not like if you were not a nonprofit and you just purchased NetSuite, you would get NetSuite. It would not have those things. But that's what I did. That's what Rashmi and I did. We developed this so that it is installed as a bundle in NetSuite, and it becomes part of NetSuite. It is a type of what's called platform development. So all of our nonprofit customers now have that. This customer in 2013, also you're a foundation, so you work a little bit differently. You might not have wanted it. You can elect to have this or not have this. So if you're, in Zach, or I know Alex is now contacts nonprofit organizations and talks about our solution. Now we have this available through the work that we've done. So, have you used Salesforce at all, or the yeah? So, and do you use the nonprofit success pack or the nonprofit starter pack?
It wasn't available when I was working.
Okay, yeah.
Anything like that.
So it's the same thing. Salesforce is a platform, and it uses what are called managed packages that are installed into native Salesforce, and it adds functionality that would not be there without those packages.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Quick question. What is your name?
Sean.
Sean. Yes.
So, I'm like, above all the bells and whistles and pretty stuff on the top, but one main motivation to be here today is really to figure out how much this might alleviate pain of us having like a dozen different systems.
Yeah.
How much we can consolidate those. So it seems like this can pick up most or all what QuickBooks does.
Yes.
Right? Most or all what Salesforce does, and we're using it for donations, but we're also using it, half of our money is earned income.
Is it earned income? And how are you tracking? How are you tracking that now?
Salesforce.
Okay. And are you using the Success Pack or?
So that's sort of first coming to ground, right?
Well, it's a little. You probably have a version. You have a version of the nonprofit starter pack, likely.
Okay.
So, and did you have a consultant do your implementation?
Yeah, I was not part of the team that that did all that. We just wrapped it up. So like authorize.net, where you guys manage all that whole sort of thing, of receiving the donations and processing that, is that all happening there too?
Okay, yeah, so this is a really good question. So let me talk about this because NetSuite has the capacity to consume a lot of different kinds of data, meaning you can import it relatively easily. But here's the issue, is that that you have to have the capability, the technical capability to understand that when you import data, that it needs to attach to something. So, yeah, so like the way we designed it so that you can match it to a person's name. You know, we have householding associated with it. Using Salesforce CRM is a good choice if, do you do marketing, I assume, from Salesforce CRM? Do you do email campaigns, or what types of, how do you use Salesforce?
But really, like, it's our contributed revenue side.
Yeah.
It's not that many donors, and so it's a handful of small donors.
Okay. How many would you say?
I don't have to interface with that a whole lot, but aside from our annual event, it's probably like 100 or 200 connections.
All right, so it's not that many. Yeah. I would say, I would actually have to probably look at all of your revenue streams and everything. I still am a fan of using Salesforce CRM just because I think it, as a CRM tool, it has better capability than NetSuite. NetSuite has CRM. You can do things out of NetSuite. It integrates, so you kind of have to divide and conquer. You could, in your instance, if you only have, that many donors and they are major donors, you could decide not to use Salesforce, and you could put them all into NetSuite very easily. For organizations that have big individual giving programs that are doing a lot of email campaigning, that are very slick in how they're managing their website and their lead pipeline and prospect pipeline, which some orgs are, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I think it would be better to do some type of integration between Salesforce and NetSuite.
So in that case, probably more an import-export kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then authorizing them would also be kind of an import and map the data.
It would be an import, yeah.
And form stack would be also kind of an import map the data kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'm actually right now, at this very moment, I'm working on an integration between Salesforce SuccessPack and NetSuite. And in any type of integration, you would work with a consultant to do this. With FormStack, same thing. Does FormStack pipe into Salesforce, or does it pipe into nothing, or you just use FormStack?
I'm not sure. I think, I couldn't tell. I suspect it would manually enter it.
Okay, all right. So in any type, and by the way, all of you in this room, you're going to see more and more integration. This is just the wave of the future. It's like figuring out how to manage integrations. It's not going to go away. We're going to have great systems like this that can do a 360, but I can assure you, you are never going to have everything all in one place where it happens all in one place. You're going to get integration into NetSuite, but you're not going to do it all in NetSuite. And you shouldn't even try, because things happen so fast in the technology world. I've been in technology for 20 years, and I can tell you that the speed is picked up on point tools in such a manner that it's just going to get faster and better to do things on your phone, text to donation, all that kind of stuff. But in your instance, yes, what you want to do is think about how you would integrate, not if you're going to integrate. And the best way to do that is to think about how to set up IDs between systems so that you can match really easily. And the way you do that, the reason that NetSuite is so great is because there's what's called an internal ID. There's the ability to create custom fields. So in your FormStack or in Salesforce, what you do is you just set up ID systems so that you put your Salesforce import IDs in NetSuite, and you put your NetSuite import IDs in Salesforce. And if you have FormStack coming into Salesforce, that would probably be a better way to do it if you are not currently doing that, because then it will create an ID structure that you can use an API. Salesforce has a lot of sophisticated integration tools that are getting better. So someone would just need to talk to you about it. But I will say this about Salesforce. It is not an accounting system. It's terrible. Not terrible. It's not designed that way. So part of what you need to understand is what tool is the right for the job. It's a great CRM marketing tool, but NetSuite has far more capacity to handle financials of all kinds. And as Zach was talking about, inventory, manufacturing, the ability to add payroll. There's so many things that an enterprise resource planning tool can do for you that allows you to do this disrupt where you can really connect the dollars to outcome. That goes into NetSuite. But the marketing, the outreach, any kind of donor communication where from an individual get-in program would not attempt to do that in NetSuite. And that's not slamming NetSuite. It's just being, being honest.
The right tool for the job.
Yeah, the right tool for the job. Yeah.
So in your implementation with nonprofits, do you find that it's implemented over a good cross-segment of the function? So in your example, you have program, finance, fundraising people. Is it meant to be a platform that's shared by all of those functions? Like almost everyone in the organization has access to it, though that access is limited. So that's one question, because I see a lot of nonprofits wanting to share tools and end up using Excel and passing them around when it would be great if everybody could log in and work on a budget, collaborate on a budget. So how collaborative is the implementation when you normally implement it at a nonprofit?
Right, okay, so this is a good question too. And then you also have to realize that that we work with all different sizes of nonprofit organizations. So I'm working on consulting with an organization that is going to have like literally 4,000 or 5,000 users, and then there are the social impact. There's 5 users. So the capability of having multiple roles is there. What we designed was to design for those roles that you saw, the accounts payable, accounts receivable, the program, the development director. You may not fit that role exactly, but if you look at your organization, you would want to find the person who is most closely aligned to that role, and then assign them other privileges, because that's the other thing about these types of systems is that you determine who has access to what menu or module. It's not out of the box. So you could definitely do that. Again, it's possible, but you would need to sit down with your people and figure it out ahead of time, right? Because that's what happens. Things become ad hoc because we're all really busy. And it's like you think about implementing something, and it's like you have to step back a little bit and get a little bit more structured in your planning. But once you do, it's awesome. There's so many things that you can do. But you got to prepare, right? So do you have something in mind in your organization?
Budgeting is a big one, because often you want a lot of collaborators. You're collaborating with all your program people and nonprofit, and you really want their buy-in in developing their budgets. And you want a tool that is not easily prone to errors like Excel can be, and getting lots of and things wrong. So that is an example. I'm curious if there's a module or bundle in NetSuite that allows budget creation and collaboration.
Right. So I'm going to cue a few things up, and then Zach may have something to say about this. So there is a budget module in NetSuite. I want to tell you a few things about NetSuite too that you may already know. It's just like Salesforce, where there's an app exchange, where you can add things to NetSuite to give it more power. And that's always going to be the case, because NetSuite is big and it can't do everything well. It can do some things well. So it does integrate with a tool for budgeting. It does have a basic budgeting mechanism, but it's not fancy. It doesn't look really pretty. That said, I've moved into a different role at NetSuite, but Rashmi Singh, my counterpart, we now have a product manager. So we, as a nonprofit team, are building out expense management, budgeting, grant accounting as part of our product roadmap. So, so it's something that is right now not native to NetSuite, except for, I mean, you can use it. It's not bad. It's okay. But we generally recommend another tool that would amplify it and would integrate with NetSuite. Yeah.
The big problem that our budgeting tool solves right now is when you get the budget created, making sure that people are on the same page with budget versus actuals in real time. So when transactions go in, you're able to see that, okay, I'm over budget, I'm under budget. When you start talking about large organizations where collaboration is really important, there's some solutions out there that are specific to that. One's called adaptive. It can do a whole lot more than just collaboration, but organizations have a decision to make. We work with adaptive and they kind of built it into the platform. So when you're working through it, you don't really know you're in adaptive, but it's just depending on how high up RPMs you want to run the budget tool is which solution you're going to use.
Yeah. And it looks really nice. The adaptive planning tool looks nice.
We use adaptive, but I was under the impression that NetSuite was kind of developing a competitor to adaptive and resolving the relationship with adaptive.
There's a couple of things that you're going to hear that don't necessarily apply to the nonprofit space, and this is probably one of them. So with the Oracle acquisition, they've got their own budgeting tool, and there was a conversation of like, okay, so what do we do with all the NetSuite competitors? And so kind of an internal conversation. For the most part, nonprofits being left alone in that conversation. Adapt is still a very good solution, and we're working closely with them. If we are not developing, that I know of, anything internally that would like get rid of adaptive or even compete with the Oracle solution.
That's, well, actually, we are. But adaptive is, we have a lot of customers who are using adaptive, and we're still continuing to recommend. But as part of the product roadmap, Oracle has a competitive tool that, as part of our Oracle acquisition, on our roadmap, we're likely going to be using them for nonprofits. So,
Is that different from what you were talking about earlier, just building out the tool that we have right now?
yes, it is. Yeah, so there's two things that we're doing. One is building out native NetSuite so that you could use it and use it in a way that people would be happy with. And then, the bells and whistles, kind of like adaptive with multiple people. It's called PCBS or something. Can't remember what the acronym stands for. It's like peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's what I keep in mind, but it's not. That's not what it is. Any other questions about your integration or thoughts?
Oh, I have 1,000, but
Yeah.
I'll be used early.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Does anyone else have questions? I'm happy to answer if you have implementation questions or product questions or anything like that.
Mine are all detailed about the accounting system, so.
Oh, well, go ahead and ask. I'm not a CPA, but I.
No, but just based on what you're saying, pulling reports is just everyday occurrence. And, you have to allocate expenses for the reports to come out correctly on each program or fund.
Yeah.
So does it have an easy way to allocate expenses?
Yes, there is a way to allocate. The people who use our financial system, in interviewing the customers, and now I'm working with customers in professional services, they really like using NetSuite a lot. So there's definitely a way to allocate expenses and to set up allocation tables and to do the kinds of things that make your life easier, just in terms of the expense side.
All right. And is there like a video tutorial or something like that on the website where you can just kind of get a look at some of the screens?
Yeah.
I got you covered there.
Yeah, so that we'll send you. We've got some really great videos about Suite Success, and he'll send you those.
Yeah.
You can go to YouTube and also look up, I think NetSuite nonprofit, just like go, in the search there, you'll see like 5 different videos.
Okay.
And we're working on it too, I think I think it's an exciting time to be at NetSuite, but it's going to be even more exciting like 2 years from now, because we now have a team of people. Before it was just Rashmi and me, and now we have a group of developers who are going to be really developing NetSuite for nonprofits. So we got a lot done. Native NetSuite has a lot, but there's with grant accounting and expense management and budgetary controls and things like that, there's a whole lot that is going to be added. So it's going to be 2018 before we really debut with that, but right now, when you got it in 2013 as a foundation. I think NetSuite's great and it works great.
It's
but
very customizable. So
Yeah.
like if your bill screen is missing a field that you really want to see, you can just add that field. They have multiple segments. So are you in QuickBooks right now? So you have like class, right?
Right.
Well, they started off with just department, location, and class, but now they have custom segments. You can have as many of those as you want, so you can really run your reports very
yeah, so
easily that way.
these are custom segments. These are the ones that we added.
So this is cool. That is fun. I like customizing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make it so, that's the thing about it being a platform. You can make it do what you need it to do for your organization. It's just like Salesforce in that way, right? Which is great. It's also less great. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts?
Cheryl and I are going to be around for the next
Yeah.
couple minutes. So if you
Yes,
have any questions that you didn't think were useful for the entire group,
Yep.
come and ask us. And, I'm the worst salesperson in the world because I came to a networking event and I have 0 business cards. I ran out after my last networking event. So if you've got one, you can share it with me. But I think I've connected to most of you guys. So we'll be able to talk afterwards.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
And I, am partially paid to get rid of stuff like this, these water bottles. Please take them home, as well as these, if you want.
Your metrics?
Yes.
Sounds like you have a fun job. And are these giveaways?
Yes, that's what I was
Do you
talking
have?
about.
I already have
You already have. I'm dying to try this out. You put
Make sure to keep the
fruit in
water.
the middle or something to flavor your water. Yes. Very cute.
What?
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, of course. It was nice to meet you. Let's keep in touch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just let me know.
Perfect timing.
Oh.
Perfect timing or what?
Yeah, he wants to go home.
Yeah, and I'm on the team with Dale for organizing.
Yes, okay, got it.
So, hey, and I love learning about these seven times. I work with companies right now that so, we're like using Excel spreadsheets, maybe.
Yeah. Of course. Thank you so much. That was great. You too. My name is Tristan. Yeah. I work for Accounting for Change. I do nonprofit consulting, accounting consulting.
I'd love to stay in touch with you.
Were you good? Did you bring your cards?
So I really
So we do in-office work and we do off-site work. So it's a combination of both. Like that's the title of the course, NTEN, on a Absolutely, yeah, that's our bread and butter.
I was teaching support all the events and up on the 16th floor, there's even more room and more spaces with recording stuff. Yeah. Good idea.
No, I guess you guys know this is.
Oh, good. I mean, yeah.
So Cheryl, so we always try to give the speakers something I'm wondering if you would like. Yeah, that is a good word. Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
Wow, have you tried?
What is your name? Katie Walsh. I want to make sure that I make a note of it, because I'd love to stay in touch. I want to ask you how you're enjoying, working with NetSuite and just questions about how it's going. I talked to Cash, I'll be able to look it up, but I talked to someone at Michael and Susan Dell Foundation in late 2014. Were you there? Yeah.
Oh, great. Oh, wow.
And they were working with them?
No,
Okay, so Jake.
So Jason,
Yeah.
So he's like a
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, because I worked with Jake on the implementation. And Jake's working with us.
Yeah. Let me get you the name. I want to make sure that I'm really bad at remembering people's names. So,
It's Katie,
gosh, that name sounds so familiar. So you've been working there since 2012?
I've been there since 2012.
You've been there so long?
Yeah, I was there with QuickBooks.
Wow.
So I really appreciate that. Yeah.
So what is your email address?
It's Katie.Walsh@MSDF.
Do you like the potatoes and the eggs and the tortillas?
Did you get that? MSDF.org.
Yeah.
There's sometimes the other ones.
All right. Well, that's cool. And
Yeah.
and you still like that?
I actually just asked for more responsibilities. I just asked to be an admin. Yeah.
So, gosh.
So I'm still in the accounting team. So my actual role in NetSuite is an accountant. But like I said, I work on all the integrations.
Yeah.
And I spend like a lot of my time actually doing like accounting. So the person who helps us is our actual admin. He's also our Salesforce admin. He's all of our admin direction and things over me. So I've kind of asked to take over some of those more less developing admin tasks.
You need to do that.
Yeah.
You do.
Also, I went to Sweet World in 2013-14. and then I took 15 and 16 off, and then I went this year. And since he wasn't going, I just thought, like sneak into some of these sessions that I would probably go to that I wouldn't normally go to. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I not even know that this is like some of the bundles that are just free? You literally just turn them on and they don't even know they exist. You know, like we really need to have a better view into things like some of the custom fields we so we actually have offices in India, South Africa, and then we to for-profit entities. They're for-profit Texas entities, but they're under our federal subscription, so it's kind of complicated. So we're on one roll. And one of the things we did last year is because our for-profit companies are starting to make money, and it's all subscription billing. I didn't know there was subscription billing. So I had Jake customize with everything. I just found out last week that subscription billing has everything we put on to customize, like when the contract's up, when it means like dates to renew, all of that stuff. I was like, what is so I'm like, I think we need a better view. He doesn't have the time to keep us up to date on those things.
See, that's what happens. You're using NetSuite or you're using Salesforce in a specific way, and you've got it set up, and you're doing your stuff, so you don't always know. Because it's so big, like there's so much that you
like the problem with the customizing is like you don't go to see if there's already a solution for it. You're like, well, just build that in.
Right, and then it can be deprecated too. So you do it one way, and then an enhancement comes along, and then it's no longer the best way to do it. And that's what I've encountered.
Well, it's the benefit of using your like out of the box thing. It's like after that's fine. It does the same thing. I'm gonna have him change it. We're gonna use all our new contracts going forward. It's gonna be on subscription billing, but you get the benefit of the out of the box reports related to that. You know,
so there's all that stuff.
Otherwise, you're just building on your own reports because you have to integrate all these custom fields.
Well, Katie, I'm really excited for you, and I think that what I would recommend from a career point of view is you take the certification classes. If you go back and educate yourself and get the certifications. Because I think it's really, I really like Salesforce. NetSuite is kind of on its way to being, allowed for using it. And the nonprofit sector needs really great people. They need people who know,
when I think about the first phase,
it's one thing to take the class, but when you're in the real world doing it, it's a completely different experience.
And I don't like
and it's a great
this is here, but I say like that's this way. I
really
let's think about import
I'm so
export
grateful that
things in terms of phase two.
Have these types of tools, you don't have to be a developer. You know what I mean? Like, you can be a developer, but you can
Well, it's like I learned about workflows, and I'm like, so my boss was like, I don't think I have to be a developer to do workflows. I was like, if I understood that session right, I can do some of these things and asking Jake to do it. And then he's actually writing code for a lot of.
Right, right, so things might not off exactly the way they are supposed to work, but I mean, that's the joy. I think that's the thing about being in a role where you get to play around with the tool. You learn so much just by having an idea, and it's so gratifying to make your job easier. And to have figured it out. There's a real creative process. So I do. What's your title now?
So we would talk about that.
It's still just.
And then we would say, okay, where you are right now.
What is it, senior?
Senior accountant.
Payables,
Senior accountant.
like you're running your fantasy reports right now, where you fall on this list, and where would you like to do it?
Well, good. Definitely let's stay in touch.
Okay,
Because I'd really like to get customer feedback. And I did a whole round of interviews in 2014, and then we were really busy with other stuff, like our head was down. And now I'm working a new role. It's a customer experience role where we're trying to get customer feedback. And now we have this new tool, may or may not work for you, the different bundles. But it would be really great to stay in touch and interview you and just figure out if there's anything that our customers might want to know about. And there's things that you might benefit from that we're doing that you wouldn't necessarily know about.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great, well, it's so
Should
nice
not
to
all
meet you.
that
Nice to
stuff
meet you,
like
Deb.
after you
Have a
sign
nice
the
day.
Yeah, I'll
contract.
send you
How
an
to go
email
about
just
it.
to remind you of who I am. Yeah.
There's always gonna be a pain though.
100%. 100%.
I'll look at the PDF of that.
Yes.
We'll see.
Only,
You want this?
knocks it down to $5. Yeah, and you want to talk to Lisa, who's at the capital idea desk?
No, it's
Thank you,
it's
guys.
beautiful what you gotta do, but yeah, I'm not gonna be with you.
Yeah, I'll send her.
Great, thank you very much.
And I was talking to Dale about maybe buying lunch for the nonprofit CFO group. Be able to give a presentation. I've got a budget.
You did great.
And,
You've done this before.
Not this one, but.
No?
Okay.
All right.
No, but,
Yeah.
so I'm really happy and excited because we're doing something that I think is hopefully going to really help people.
Well, there weren't very many people here for it. I was surprised, but maybe it has something to do with,
Do you have any?
I don't know, something. We're in a little bit of a different space, maybe.
I've been thinking about
Yeah.
that too for 4 hours. And
Oh, I forgot what I was
oh,
gonna say.
you
Oh, but the
turn
people
out-
who are here are good for word of mouth.
Yes.
Yes, yes, and more.
And just to meet them, you know, I really, you know, I work with people on the phone a lot, I work from home, so just meeting people in
So,
person is really
right.
nice, you know, it's like.
I do too, I work from home, so it's like, when I get around people, because I'm so excited.
And do you work, for a specific nonprofit or for like?
I did for 13 years.
We'll
And
have
then,
fun networking, and if we let them know kind of what we're doing.
got there and thought I was gonna just go to another job, but I kept getting,
Yeah, be in touch. Yeah.
calls from people who needed help.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, and then sooner or later, it was a year later, and I, managed to keep myself afloat with just word of mouth.
With other nonprofits. so-
QuickBooks for nonprofits is my specialty.
Oh.
So, and mostly smaller nonprofits that, are association and something. I have a couple of small businesses. but-
Well, then you'll really appreciate the videos.
Yeah.
Because you can get a better, deeper dive into the actual product.
Yay.
Yeah, so it is, you do QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online, I assume, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. The switch around is, the desktop was so much more powerful than online, but online's getting better and better. And then I have people saying, we want to switch to online so and so can share and see, it's
Does online allow for CSV imports yet?
Yes.
Does?
I don't know.
I don't either.
When I worked for a association CRM company, and every now and then I would get a small association that was on QuickBooks Online,
Yeah.
and 2 years ago, couldn't go.
I'm
It was
trying
real hard
to remember
integration.
what the screen comes up with that you can import from. These types of files that it accepts, but I'm pretty sure CSV, yes.
Yes, it has import.
I think
I knew it had to be soon.
Yeah, I think
They're making it think more, QuickBooks Online, and adjust to remembering transactions and things
Yeah.
like that.
Like a memorized transaction.
And your workflows. So it's getting better.
Yeah, well, it has to.
Boy, did I hate it.
To stay competitive, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more that are becoming online, so,
Oh, I know, and Intuit is pushing it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it makes it easier to do, I only use internet technology now, so I can't even imagine doing something that wasn't.
For the desktop software. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Not anymore, but,
Right.
just because it's so easy to share things, but.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, our work, thank you for the
Yeah,
presentation.
what did she,
Sean,
Sean,
we used to be good ones.
Okay, speech,
And I'm down under the low, but I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Mission Council.
Mission Council's new name. We're doing all the same stuff we used to do, so,
Social media.
starting to work a lot more with, and nonprofits. Kids,
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw
Yes.
fire and everything.
Yes, you have.
I like it.
You get us something here.
Yes,
So
and tell me you guys
initiatives
could
personal.
make it yourself.
Oh, you're gonna do that.
Yeah.
That's what finally forced our switch.
Yeah.
We fished a couple.
I love it, thank you.
I was the prime center, so I was the
Yeah.
prime laid off when we got fired. Because it was, you know, through the edge, it's, you know, they didn't really want us. I didn't.
Oh, it's not one of this,
Yeah, sure.
It is. It's hard for our
And it wasn't gonna be mine.
because, yeah, and then, and we were, you know, probably watching this yet. For the last.
He's my friend, yeah.
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 Mhm.
Sounds like you're happy where you're now.
I am happy where I am now. It was really hard
overnighted
to.
it to me. I don't mind.
I still have all
Wasn't
those
$100.
certifications. I really, you know, that's
And it wasn't
my
like
area. That's
Sweetheart discount. It was like,
coming
this
to
got
that.
so good.
It was a big learning curve for me, not as a platform, but just as, you know, not an accountant.
Yeah.
And I don't know the system, and the customers are really different, they're not doing the same thing, so it was.
Really? When they first started still nonprofit revolution,
Yeah, it's different
kind of.
people, it's
They,
different people, you know, because I've worked with women marketers
Depending
and
on the kind of
companies
sign
and
you
people,
got.
and I did not work with, when I did,
So it could be the same organization, just the different
different
people.
people, right?
Totally different personality types.
Exactly,
roles,
so,
yeah.
Wow.
and then the fundraising, I did a lot of work with fundraising operations where I had to reconcile with the accounting system, but I didn't work with the accountants. So I
Disruption in
worked
design
with,
making.
you know, that charts that I was doing, I worked with the clerks
So,
and development
Do you
assistants,
have
so
people
it
in
was
home meter
a
who can
lot
have
of,
some pizza?
like I never heard of gas meters, I didn't know about, I didn't know a lot of things, I didn't know.
Alright.
So it was good, but it was,
Even though, did you
you
hear
know,
my
it was an expansion, but it was not, you know,
Confess to no harm.
it wasn't comfortable, because it wasn't my background,
Yeah.
so,
And, I don't.
yeah.
Breakfast on
Cool, what you guys are doing.
Breakfast tacos or what?
How that's what you're doing.
So,
That's
where
like
are
moving
they?
pretty aggressively into the nonprofit stuff.
Yes.
There's
Oh,
something
so
in
you
the
haven't
sense.
found
Yeah.
like.
The last couple
I
of
think,
years.
I think breakfast.
You
There's
like.
one of the things that motivated me is now I just want to get more backstory and everything.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think that's that.
You know what, I did not, I did not, work
Oh my
for
gosh.
something that I didn't.
There is a, I have a friend who used to
And I've
work
always
in
been
the
that
highway.
way, that I
And
wouldn't
he,
use that, but I wouldn't try to implement a product or do something that I would keep looking
On
at.
Facebook, and he wrote a book on tacos, and he's got tours across Texas on taco places.
I love tacos.
I like tacos.
I had a taco for breakfast.
Yeah.
Since
Today.
I was hired,
Right.
so many more people
Yeah.
have been to support the nonprofit. I think that with the Oracle acquisition, it was a good thing, but, they're really investing in nonprofits, so I think that,
I'm gonna go get my, are y'all gonna be here a second? Did you get tracking
that
down
other,
there?
you know, have the resources to be able to do a good job with, you know, so
I have not got my
that
I'll go walk
we
in
have
and
great people and we have the resources, so I feel like it's gonna be good, you know, what we've done so far is so much better than it was, and I think it's just gonna get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems to have turned in some place.
Yeah.
Thank you again for coming.
You're welcome, and if you, I don't have a card, but, you know, if you do, yeah, and I'm happy to talk to you more about, what you're trying to do, and offer any kind of free advice.
I'm trying to figure out, basically, is this the next big move, trying to do something like this, or is it, the HR side of things?
Yeah.
We definitely gotta consolidate our systems. If we need
What are you using now?
everything. There's the stuff I listed to you before, it's
Yeah.
a half dozen more.
Mhm.
So, let's see what else is there. There's time tracking with Harvest. There's Excel spreadsheets for
Yeah.
various
Mhm.
things. 3 different ADP systems for different HR functions.
Wow,
Yeah, for the ADP,
it has their own
it's different.
modularization.
Like payrolls are one module, 401k is another module, background checks is another module. Using Tribe HR, UL's product for tracking PTO and our application process.
It's a, you, and are you the one who's doing all of it, or is it your team, or who's your?
I have direct responsibility for a lot of it. The CRM, Salesforce, it doesn't have an owner, but we're trying to convince the fundraising side of the house to be on there.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna have them, we just got, Brenda had fundraising, Charlie Scarborough, who's over at CETA, and so we managed to get that in.
That's awesome.
And,
Yeah.
work for us, and he's a key advocate for, that having a home, so probably what's going on. So,
Yeah.
all the same, if we can get the functionality that we need.
Yeah, yes, we have.
There's a lot of opportunity for a certain amount of time wasted
Yeah.
translating from Salesforce to
Right.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, and it makes
$50-ish,
things,
$60-ish.
it's hard to focus on strategy when you're spending a lot of time doing those things that keep things running.
Yeah.
It does take a lot of effort to get things organized so that we can put things together, but, you know, it does make a difference.
Yeah, and I think we've had tremendous growth over the last 3 years. Half of service in our